Oda revealed Imu's origin and powers back in Skypiea, and we didn't even notice it, just as we did not notice foreshadowing about Sun God Nika. I think you will agree that Skypiea was one of the most hated arcs a few years ago, but now, chapter after chapter, we can see that Skypiea was Oda's foreshadowing arc for the final saga. And the most interesting fact is that the smallest foreshadowing of the Sun God also hinted at Imu's powers. We all know these two panels. In chapter 287, Moose mentioned Sun God Nika for the first time in the story, and at the end of Skypiea, we saw Luffy dancing in the same pose as Nika. But there is a third one as well. I'm sure most of you know about Luffy's obsession over the beetles. We have seen it on cover stories, in One Piece films, during Luffy's childhood at Fishman Island, and even on Egghead. But do you know where it started? In Skypiea. He said a Hercules and an Atlas beetle are every child's dream in their world, and when Chopper asked him what's greater, an Atlas beetle or One Piece, Luffy was weirdly having a hard time answering it. Of course, it's a joke, but I don't think it's just a joke, and I'll explain why. The beetle is connected to Nika. Nika is the sun god, and in Egypt there is a god that represents the morning sun named Khepri, who had the head of a beetle. It's not just a coincidence. Khepri also represents creation and the renewal of life. Luffy has renewed a lot of people's lives during the series, starting with Zoro and Kobe in the first 3 chapters. Another hint is this image. Isis and Nefertari are standing before a beetle-headed god who sits upon a colorful throne. It's clear that Alabasta is based on Egypt, and the Alabasta kingdom and the Nefertari family played a big role during the Void Century. It's also obvious that Imu has some kind of connection with the Nefertari family, especially Nefertari D. Lily, who lived 800 years ago. Now, Imu's main concern is Nefertari Vivi, as her picture was shown along with Sun God Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shirahoshi, one of the ancient weapons. I also want you to pay attention to Isis's earrings. Boa Hancock has the exact same earrings in One Piece. The Sun God, Nefertari, and Boa's earrings. As I said, it's not just a coincidence. Luffy could not choose between an Atlas beetle and the One Piece. The Atlas beetle is not just a random beetle. The ancient kingdom is most likely based on Atlantis. Atlantis was a great city that was punished by the gods, and the city sunk into the sea. Who call themselves gods in the One Piece world? The Celestial Dragons. While Fishman Island may be based more on the depictions of Atlantis in fantasy, the actual myth applies to the ancient kingdom. Maybe this is why Joy Boy and Noah were mentioned in the Fishman Island arc, to heavily imply that the answer to the ancient kingdom lies in the sea. Also, according to Plato, the first king of Atlantis was also named Atlas, and Atlas is a titan, a giant in Greek mythology. There are theories that Joy Boy was a giant as well. A giant straw hat at Mary Joey's is the best hint for it. So if we take it this way, Atlas Beetle means Sun God Joy Boy. Now, it may be a reach, but by being a sun god, Luffy is the freest man in One Piece. Also, it's said that Nika would one day come for the slaves to liberate them from their oppressive masters and bring smiles to their faces. So, One Piece or Atlas Beetle. Or, in other words, One Piece or being the freest man in the world. Becoming the Pirate King and being a man with the most freedom in the world is the same for Luffy. That's why he could not answer Chopper's question, but of course, at the time, it was just a joke. Now let's talk about Imu. In Egyptian mythology, there is a god named Atum. Atum created himself and is closely associated with the evening sun. As a primordial god and as the evening sun, Atum has underworld connections. He is believed to have been present in ideology as early as pre-dynastic times, becoming even more prevalent during the Old Kingdom and continuing to be worshipped through the Middle and New Kingdom. Sounds familiar, right? We know that Imu lived 800 years ago as well, but what if Imu is immortal and she was alive even before that? Khepri and Atum were seen as aspects of Ra. Khepri was the morning god and Atum was the sun in the evening. It's said that Atum has made union with his shadow, and sometimes he is also shown as a serpent, the form he returns to at the end of the creative cycle, and also occasionally as a mongoose, lion, bull, lizard, or ape. We have not seen the Gorosei's forms, only Saturn's, and if we look at their shadows, they have similarities to those 5 animals, so there is a chance that Oda took inspiration from this mythological god. Let's go back to the Skypiea arc and one of the most important flashbacks in One Piece, to Noland's backstory. Everyone thinks that Usopp is Noland's descendant, and there are a lot of parallels between them, but have you noticed that Luffy and Noland have a lot of similarities as well? Noland is an explorer who comes across an island where the people are in danger, and steps steps in to save them, just as Luffy does throughout the story. His first interaction with the Shandians is to slay a false god, Kashigami, and this theme is continued when he convinces the Shandians to accept medicine rather than praying to the gods. This not only anticipates Luffy defeating the false god Enel, but more broadly the D-Clan's position as God's natural enemy, which will lead Luffy to take down the Celestial Dragons. Once Nolan saves the Shandians from tree fever, the two peoples throw a massive party just as those Luffy loves at the end of major story arcs. We even see a bonfire dance towards the end of chapter 290 that looks very similar to the panel of Luffy dancing with wolves from chapter 253, the chapter where Sun God Nika was foreshadowed. It is also worth noting that Nolan's very first action in the flashback is killing a Sea King, just as Luffy's first action when he sets out to sea is defeating the Lord of the Coast. In these chapters, the sun, especially the evening sun, is mentioned and shown way too many times. If Nolan could not save the village before the evening sun, Shandians would have killed Nolan's group, but Nolan found the medicine and cured everyone before the evening sun, so we can say he won against the evening sun. And then we saw a similar dance to Nika's panel. The sun plays the biggest part in One Piece. Let's start with the very beginning. Luffy grew up in Fuchsia Village, which is part of Dawn Island. The first arc is also called Romance Dawn. Those two hold poneglyphs and therefore were allies of the ancient kingdom and have the sun in their flags. Alabasta, Skypiea, Gyojin Island, Wano. What was the nickname of the only girl alive able to bring back everything that happened during the Void Century? Miss All Sunday. The marks of those who were slaves but eventually were liberated by Fisher Tiger? A sun. And the ship that will reach the very end of the world? The Thousand Sunny. Even specific moments and small conversations. When Luffy saves Skypiea by defeating Enel, he does so while screaming, "Let the sun shine." When Ace and Blackbeard fight, it is clearly stated that only one will win, the sun or the darkness. I think that's more than enough. The topic of the sun meaning freedom and the Straw Hats being the ones that are going to bring the dawn has been there from the very beginning. Oda did not just randomly draw the evening sun 5 times in chapter 289. Back to Nolan's flashback. I believe this flashback was foreshadowing for Luffy vs. Imu. Nolan was portrayed as Luffy. He was not a sun god, but he had many parallels with Luffy the same way Kashigami and the Evening Sun were portrayed as Imu. Kashigami did not have any powers and could not curse the village, while Imu has that ability. We know that Zunesha carries the island of Zao on its back as punishment for an unspecified crime it committed in the past, and I believe Imu is the one who put this curse on Zunesha. Zunesha's eye panel was a good hint for it. Also, probably no one hates Joy Boy as much as Imu, so he punished everyone that was affiliated with Joy Boy 800 years ago, including the Buccaneers race. Also, while Imu might not be a god, she is the one who sits on the empty throne. Nolan killed Kashigami and won against the Evening Sun. I believe the same will happen in Luffy vs. Imu's fight. Sun God Nika will win against Imu. Of course, I'm not saying that Imu is a sun god as well. Oda just took inspiration from Egyptian mythology, and the way morning and evening suns are total opposites, the same way Luffy and Imu must be opposites and a little bit similar as well. In One Piece, Oda used the light and darkness theme, where Luffy is the light and Imu is the darkness. There are a lot of theories about Imu's powers. The most popular ones are Umibozu and the moon god Devil Fruit. After observing all of these parallels between Imu, Atum, and Egyptian mythology, it's possible that Imu has some powers connected to shadows, a stronger or different version of Gecko Moria's Devil Fruit. Unlike Imu, Gorosei's powers are easier to guess. If you are interested in this topic, you can watch this video right here. Thanks for watching. Bye.